Or should I give a quick breakdown?
Break it down.
Break it down.
Well, I came to Seattle during the grunge years. I'm that old, as you may have guessed from my gray hair. But I was not a grunge musician. I didn't really sympathize with grunge music, even though it was happening all around me. It seemed dumber than I wanted music to be. I liked that it was rock, but when I tried to play grunge music, I didn't feel authentic. I felt I just couldn't. I couldn't go like, "Here I'm in the show." I just felt like a dummy. It wasn't me, and the music that I made, even in the height of the grunge years, was very much like, "La la, sing a song," and that was not popular then. And so I kind of labored in obscurity, and I didn't have very much confidence about the music I was making because it didn't sound like anything that was popular. And I was not a teenager who was brimming over with a feeling of belonging to the world. You know, I felt already like I wasn't fitting in with other people. And so when I started playing music and it didn't sound like other people's stuff, I was embarrassed and I didn't want to play my stuff for people. Little by little, I started doing it, and as grunge was exploding around the world, there were these other little bands that were starting to kind of play shows and find each other in Seattle, and they were bands like Built to Spill and Modest Mouse and Harvey Danger and Death Cab for Cutie. They were all bands that at the time had no fans, because bands like Soundgarden were what people thought of when they thought of Seattle music. So these little bands were playing shows with each other, and you'd go to a show and it'd be Modest Mouse opening for Built to Spill, and there'd be 100 people there. And the 100 people would be, but it felt like a thing that would never be popular. Elliott Smith came out of that scene, a lot of Portland bands. Also part of it, where, you know, when Elliott Smith first started playing shows in Seattle, he would sit in a chair and the audience would sit on the floor of the club. And there'd be, 60 people in this club watching him play, and it felt like a church service, a lot more than it did any kind of rock show. And so my music now didn't seem so strange because other people were doing other stuff that maybe wasn't exactly the same, but it gave me the confidence to start playing. But I spent a lot of years feeling like I wasn't good enough. And so I didn't make my first record album until I was 32 years old, which is an age where most people have abandoned the dream of rock and roll. I remember being 20 and meeting a guy who was 28 who was still in a punk rock band. And I was like, 28? You're so old. Like, are you serious? Shouldn't you be like working at a bank or something? 28, I couldn't even imagine what a 28-year-old did, let alone why a 28-year-old was working in a bar because he was in a punk rock band. And this guy, this 28-year-old, ended up starting a band called Zeke, who became real big punk rockers, and many years later he met me on the street when I was putting out my first record. I was 32. By that point, he was almost 40. And he was like, "Aren't you a little old to be making rock music?" But what happened was I put out this record and it was successful, and it was successful enough. I didn't get rich and famous, but I found a fan base around the world that liked songs. And this is the world that you're growing up in is one where musicians can be like me. When I was a kid, if you were a musician, you either made it, by which I mean you got famous and rich, or it was over. You played guitar in a bar band on weekends. There wasn't the opportunity to be a musician. Or you became a music teacher, or you became he did what a lot of musicians do, which is they become music industry people. They get jobs at radio stations or they get jobs at record labels. So that was the world I grew up in. Now you live in a world where you can put your music on YouTube, and you don't get rich, but you make as much money as you would make if you were working in another job. You know, and as my career has gone on, I've put out 4 records. And I make the same amount of money as a dentist does, which is pretty good. There are a lot of people that go to lots of years of college to be a dentist, and they go to their dentist job and they're a dentist, and they have a secretary and a dental assistant, and that is about the level that my career is, you know. And I'm not rich. I don't fly first class, but I got adjusted to the idea that it could just be your job that you make music. And I've gone all over the world playing and have fans in countries all around, but never so many that, like for instance, I walk into your high school and walk through the halls, and nobody goes, everybody goes, who's that old hobo? And that's true everywhere I go, everywhere except like for like 2 blocks of Broadway on Capitol Hill. And up there they're too cool to notice you. They're like, oh, there's that guy.